Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Just one more day between us and actual live regular season football. Can't not wait. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It's a great day to be great. It's a great day to break down some news and then more importantly, get into some of the biggest questions ahead of a loaded week one slate. So joining me as he does almost every single day here on the Fantasy Life Show, the one, the only, Dwain, the Rock McFarland. Dwain, good morning.
What is up, Mr. Hartitz? I am excited. I got to let my wife know, hey, you get to watch Patrick Mahomes tomorrow night. Like, she didn't realize yet. Like, she's a huge Chiefs fan. So our son went to, Texas Tech, where Patrick Mahomes went. So she's just been, a Mahomes fan ever since. And then, of course, like my daughter loves Taylor Swift. Not going to take it there. But so now she loves Travis Kelce as well. So, yeah, man, we're excited. We are one sleep, Ian, away from football.
Lamar, Mahomes, Thursday Night Football. Cannot wait. But again, we got plenty of news to get through first. But before we even do that, a quick word on Fantasy Life Plus. Guys, Fantasy Life Plus has been here for your drafts, and now we're also going to be here each and every week to help get you a scholar through that regular season grind and hopefully into your fantasy football championship. From our consensus rankings to our start sit tool, which again is pretty fantastic because as much as you guys want to just simply ask us who you want to start or maybe who you want to sit, we have a tool that again will line up exactly what each of our 6 consensus experts are thinking with whatever combination you want to look at. So League Sync can make it easy to find who's on the waiver wire. Waiver wire tool can also tell you how much fab to spend. Again, so many opportunities to just help make your team a little bit better and hopefully get that much closer to your grand prize. So Fantasy Life Plus, check it out. All right, Dwain, relatively light news day. Again, we got some pretty healthy teams going on Thursday and Friday, so not overly worried about the injury report. As always, though, on Fridays on the Fantasy Life Show, we're going to be going through all the fantasy relevant injuries. So really just going off of 2 press conferences where, again, we got some good news on some banged up players. First off is Lions running back Jahmyr Gibbs. We did have him say he's 98 to 100% healthy, Dwain, which I will say is 12% away from 110%. So I don't love that answer, but all jokes aside, he should be out there for week one. How high is too high to rank, someone who is regularly going off the board as a top 5 player at his position?
I've got him right now sitting at number 11 overall, in the ranks for the week. I mean, you've got a really nice matchup here with the Rams. The Rams were pretty decent against the run last year, but a lot of that, came down to game scripts and different things. I don't think they're like particularly like a great run defense but we've just got this great environment where we're expecting a shootout between the Lions and the Rams. So we've got a game total right now of 51.5. So there's going to be a lot of points flying around. 27.75 is the team total for Detroit. That is the highest on the slate for this weekend. So I thought about actually moving him even a little bit higher. I've got him 1 spot behind Barkley right now, 2 spots behind AJ Brown, 3 spots behind Jonathan Taylor. But like, if you told me you wanted to rank him above all 3 of those players, that's how high I thought about taking him. The only reason I didn't was because like he is coming off the hamstring injury. So either A, they decide to take it a little bit easy on him, B, is there a chance for re-aggravation? So based on those things, I pushed Gibbs down just a little bit in my rankings for this week versus those other 3 players. But overall, like, I'm above the industry consensus.
And look, let's face it, you got Jahmyr Gibbs on your squad. You are starting him unless you're in one of those wonky 6-man leagues out there. So I think maybe the bigger storyline here, Dwain, could be a Rams defense that for the first time in a freaking long time will not have the services of arguably the single best player in the league, Aaron Donald. And even with Donald last year, man, 19th in points per game allowed. I mean, they lost Raheem Morris, obviously went back and took the Falcons job. They promoted Chris Shula, who was already, their, linebackers and pass rush coordinator last year. Expecting the same sort of defense there, but maybe, just maybe, Dwain, we're going to be having a sneaky shootout of sorts here. Not sneaky, but I mean, for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the year, I can see the Rams offense scoring a lot of points and their defense maybe giving up a lot. So going to have a lot more on that exciting Sunday night matchup here in just a short while on the show. Dwain, the other running back news we have breakdown is Mike Tomlin noting that Jaylen Warren is optimistic that he will be suiting up this Sunday as well. The Arthur Smith Bowl between the Falcons and the Steelers. How can you not get romantic about football sometimes? So Dwain, Jaylen Warren also coming off the hamstring injury. What are you feeling about him? Because not exactly the sort of, start and forget player that Jahmyr Gibbs is, obviously.
Yeah. This one's a little bit different. And we know that we've got Najee Harris there as well. We know that he can come in and carry the workload. If they need a running back 2 to step up, we've got your favorite player, Ian, and all of the NFL. We've got Cordarrelle Patterson. CPAT's ready to take over some work. So I'm a little more cautious with Jaylen Warren this week. Like, I've still got him in my top 100, in the ranks, but I'm below industry consensus on him. I'm going to definitely be watching the practice reports. We're going to find out more today. We'll have more for folks tomorrow morning whenever we come back and we do a recap on all the injury news for the week. But right now, I've got Jaylen Warren in the 90s. These things will, be changing a little bit throughout the week, but I would say I'm going to have him between 90 and 100. Right now, I've got him ranked as my number 90 player overall. So he's a guy you can still end up playing if you're in a deeper league. You're just going to need to keep an eye on the injury, but he's not someone I'm forcing into my lineup as my running back 2, where I've got him ranked.
Speaking of my favorite player, Cordarrelle Patterson, we did get an exact quote from Mike Tomlin talking about his RB room, saying in terms of how we divide the labor up, that's going to be week to week. We've got some really capable guys, and you throw Cordarrelle Patterson into that mix as well. So I'm ecstatic, Dwain. Kind of, because, I love CPAP, but I also have a lot of Jaylen Warren shares. Wouldn't love him taking too much of that pie. But again, even last year, you kind of look at his week-to-week contributions. We just kind of got really mad about that, couple of carries he got inside the 5-yard line. In reality, that was only touching the ball, I think it was 57 times for the entire season. So still very much the Najee and Jaylen Warren show. Dwayne's RB35, my RB37. Dwayne, I'm just going to list a few running backs and let me know if you would be starting Jaylen Warren over any of them. Tajay Spears, Chase Brown, Brian Robinson, Chuba Hubbard, Zamir White. I'm taking probably all of them over Jaylen.
I'm taking all of them. I'm starting all those over Jaylen. Just enough with the injury risk, man. Like, even if he plays, again, they could limit, his workload. He could re-aggravate it. Like, so there's just those tiebreakers like that. Look, normally I would easily, I might be leaning to him over a couple of those players, or it would be a close call based on matchup. That's the tier he belongs in. Yeah. But right now, there's just enough risk with it. You just don't need to force it.
And guess what? We'll have an entire week of injury stuff. They actually have to tell us now if he's practicing in full or limited. We'll see if he's questionable going to Sunday. Not done adjusting the ranks just yet, but for now, close start, sit decisions. Probably start the guy who's not actively dealing with a hamstring problem. That's some next level doctor shit right there, everybody. So quick little rapid fire for some other news that did go down. And again, not an overly eventful Tuesday. Adam Schefter did note that he believes the Bengals will have another push to try and get something done with Jamar Chase. I know all of his fantasy managers, as you start to set those lineups, would really prefer if they can get this thing done ASAP Rocky. Also, Brian Dable said Devin Singletary is an all-purpose running back, certainly someone that could be getting a ton of touches this week, and we'll be talking about him in just a short while. The most impressive Falcons pass catcher at camp, that's right, Kyle Pitts, per beat reporter Joe Patrick. Just some good old, propaganda to help Dwayne and I feel better about all the Kyle Pitts we drafted this offseason. Officially unofficial depth charts that don't mean anything unless they do have Jonnu Smith as the Dolphins backup fullback. That would be a lot cooler if that doesn't come to fruition, as much as, we respect the Durham Smythe family. Cardinals OC Drew Petzing noted that James is the bell cow in that room. That's not a surprise to anyone, and it shouldn't be a surprise to you. James Conner legit looking like a potential top 12 running back in week 1 and beyond. Also, Kadarius Toney visited the Seahawks in 2021. Ian is very excited about the possibility of Toney joining forces with Laviska Shenault. So that's just, funny. We got that going on. And finally, Dwayne, just crucial news that unironically was taking over the NFL media. Saquon Barkley made Coach Nick Sirianni say, "This is awesome. Wow." After a run. So that's the actual, that was on NFL Insiders yesterday. That was a real headline that they were running with. So that's the news, and we got plenty to get to. But first, a quick word to our friends over at Experian. Experian is to your finances what FantasyLife is to your fantasy league. It's a tool and resource designed to make your life easier, which I think we can all appreciate. The Experian app is free to download and serves as a one-stop shop for managing your financial health. And with so many spending and subscription details to track, let Experian handle it for you. They'll help you find and cancel your unwanted or forgotten subscriptions, helping you save money and focus on what really matters. That's right, winning your fantasy league. Download the Experian app today. Note that results will vary. Not all subs are eligible. Savings not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account is required. But see Experian.com for details. That's Experian. All right, Dwayne, now before we get into some, specific week 1 storylines, we like to take a moment and pay a little bit of homage to some of our favorite players. So once again, rocking some of the most comfortable t-shirts in the game. That's right. OSU Jam, CJ Stroud, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Feeling pretty good there. Dwayne, who you rocking with?
I'm going with a true throwback, Ian. We have got Earl Campbell.
Ooh.
From the Houston Oilers. Guys, some of you probably don't even know that, like they're watching this show. Did you know that it used to not be the Houston Texans, and they had freaking awesome jerseys, just this oil rig and this light blue. I nearly got that shirt with just the oil rig in the center. Yeah. Obviously, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, but Houston is close enough. And, you know, even when they moved to Tennessee, I just kind of still always loved that team. And Tennessee, you know, why didn't you just keep those jerseys if they were going to let you? You kept the same color scheme. But, man, listen to this, Ian. Earl Campbell, in his third year in the NFL, 1,934 yards and 13 rushing touchdowns in 15 games. The year before, he had 1,697 and 19 rushing touchdowns. And look, the NFL like is still obviously it can be a brutal sport. Like, we know that. We see how good these players are. But back then, man, we're talking another level. And like this was like Gladiators, and this dude was Russell Crowe. Like this was this dude was out here like, hey, he'll take all challengers. Like, he would take anybody. DBs did not want to face this man, like an amazing stiff arm. Or back then, the running back could just put their helmet down and just basically, you know, plow through you. And Earl Campbell was one of the best at that. This dude was huge. He was fast. No one wanted to tackle him in a day when everybody was considered a tough guy in the NFL. So, yeah, Earl Campbell, a player I absolutely love. And then afterwards, you know, he even had a career as a businessman in the sausage link business. So, I mean, look, you can't go wrong with that.
Man, that run to this day where like his tearaway jersey is just getting ripped to shreds and he's still plowing over one more, you know, would-be tackler after another. What an absolute beast. But I love that you bring up the uniforms, man. We do see the Titans break out the throwbacks, you know, from time to time. But for my money's worth, I think those baby blue, you know, again, former Oilers jerseys, maybe the 101 in the entire league. Why have the Texans not tried to make a power play and just start claiming those jerseys again? You know, they've been beating up on the Titans at least last year. Like, go ahead and just claim the jerseys. We've seen the Houston Cougars, the college team, go ahead and get those colors, man. So sweet out there. So love those jerseys and appreciate Earl Campbell. Just like, of course, I appreciate my Buckeyes here. So again, love the, you know, NBA Jam style, giving kind of OSU Jam the love there. But yeah, people forget because JSN sadly got injured, you know, immediately in his final season, just how dominant of a stretch he really had there at the end of 2021. Nebraska, 240 yards and a touchdown. Purdue, 139 yards and a touchdown. 105 yards in the touchdown against Michigan State, 127 and a loss against Michigan. And then finally, Dwayne, 347 and 3 touchdowns against Utah in the freaking Rose Bowl. So, yeah, he might have had a running back covering him for a bit of that game, but CJ Stroud throwing to, you know, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and obviously the most productive guy of the group, JSN. I may or may not have gotten a dynasty trade done for JSN last night, Dwayne. I would really appreciate it if he starts looking like that same guy. So, again, plenty of reasons to be very excited about Jackson Smith-Njigba this year, even before we get to that one, you know, contested catch on that slot fade from the preseason game. So just paying some homage. Again, we appreciate the fine folks over there. Comfiest t-shirts in my closet, and I really do enjoy them. So Earl Campbell and Jackson Smith-Njigba, shout out to you guys. And yeah, overall, just want to give you guys a quick note on homage. You can check out homage.com. That's HOMAGE/fantasy to reveal their top ranked officially licensed player tees. And again, so many different categories, as you saw with Dwayne's throwback, my, you know, NFL Jam style jersey, and so much more. And again, you can rep your fantasy team with pride. Be sure to use promo code LIFE for an exclusive discount for Fantasy Life listeners. Pay homage. All right, Dwayne, it is the Fantasy Questions edition of the Fantasy Life Show. Going to go through some of the biggest storylines, just, you know, really ahead of week one. Tomorrow we got some rankings. Friday we're mostly focusing on injuries. So today, again, the biggest questions out there. And what bigger question to start with than involving the big dog himself, Derrick Henry, and some of these workhorse RBs, Dwayne, that have just gone to a new environment. And accordingly, we're going to see them wearing some new colors and kind of shocking our brains here in a few short days. So whether it's Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, Devin Singletary, all running backs in new homes, and all players ranked inside the top 24. So is there a specific workhorse running back, Dwayne, in a new environment that you think will have the biggest overall impact out of the gate?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way I'm going to quantify this is based on where you drafted them in fantasy versus the production you're going to get in week one, or you go open up the FantasyLife rankings, and we'll be talking more about the ranks tomorrow with Mr. Matthew Friedman joining us. But you're going to see a huge difference. You're like, man, this player was getting drafted here, and now they're ranked here. And you've often asked that great question, Ian. Like, you'll ask me, even when we're drafting, where are you ranking in week one, Dwain? Like, we got to remember that at some point it does enter the equation. We are thinking of the whole season. But it's still really interesting when we see some of these things. So these are three great names. Saquon Barkley is ranked right where you guys would think, he would be. He's inside my top 10. He's at number 10. Then you've got Derrick Henry sitting there at number 13. He's a guy that you were drafting typically middle of round 2, sometimes the end of round 2. If you're in some of these leagues that go more heavy wide receiver, you were getting him in round 3. But the biggest name here, Ian, is definitely Joe Mixon. I mean, we're talking about a guy that you were getting in rounds 4 and 5 of your fantasy drafts. And now you look at it, he's ranked number 12 overall in my flex rank. So that combines all wide receivers, running backs, tight ends. I don't know if Joe Mixon can hold up all year, Ian. I don't know if he's going to suddenly turn into an efficient running back. But what I do know is I like the Texans' offensive line. I know it didn't live up to expectations last year, but on paper, they definitely have some investments there. We've got a great offense with C.J. Stroud and all the weapons around him. And we love the coordinator, Bobby Slowick. And, man, there is no competition. I mean, Dameon Pierce didn't look as good as Cam Akers in the preseason. So I think that this backfield is all Joe Mixon's. And you got a pretty good matchup. You're playing against the Colts, who last year gave up 126 rushing yards per game in non-overtime play and 1.3 rushing touchdowns. I think Joe Mixon in his initial game for the Houston Texans is going for 100 yards and a rushing touchdown. We'll see what he does in the passing game. A lot of other mouths to feed there, but I think he's going to be golden on the ground.
Really fun matchup here, getting Stroud versus Anthony Richardson. We obviously tried to get this going last year, but that was a game where Richardson scored freaking 17.7 fantasy points in 18 snaps before he unfortunately got that concussion to knock him out. So I'm with you, Dwain. Again, I don't think it's really a sneaky shootout, but it could just be a good old-fashioned expected shootout. And accordingly, the workhorse running back involved for the Texans should be set up pretty well in Fantasyland. So we both have him ranked as our RB7 right now. Again, you can find all of our rankings on FantasyLife.com. Meanwhile, Waz, Freeman, and Charge have him RB14 or lower. So certainly a bit of a split dynamic. But again, it's at the point where you just get into week one and you start looking around and there's only so many workhorse running backs really being leaned on, and that is Mixon. So no, Dwain, he hasn't been the most efficient running back in the world, but guess what? Saquon, Rachaad White, Alvin Kamara, and yes, Joe Mixon last year, all top 12 running backs without having to average more than 4 yards per carry. So again, would we love all of our guys to be, brushing up with 8 yards per carry like Devin Achane? Of course, but in the grand scheme of things, man, yards per carry really doesn't matter as much as we think it does when you got high touchdown upside and you can catch passes like Joe Mixon.
Yeah, and he could be more efficient this year. Like Mixon, this is an offense with Bobby Slowick that has shown that it can help generate, better yards per carry. We've seen that all along with the Kyle Shanahan offense as well. My question for you, though, Ian, I think this one's really interesting, is for tomorrow night. We saw what happened to the Ravens last year. They came out in that AFC Championship game, and they just tried to basically, throw the ball the whole time. We thought they would come out and run against the Chiefs.
How many running back carries do you think they had that game, the Ravens, total running back carries?
9.
6. They had 15 in every other game.
I was 33% too high. Yeah. So I think that is going to be firmly in their memory. We had talked about it on the matchup show before that game, which shows, coaches, they get ideas about what's the best way to beat this team across from you. I don't know how they came to the conclusion that it was going to be throwing the ball all the time, considering how good the Chiefs secondary was. That was the strength of their defense. But the Ravens tried to go right at it. I think tomorrow night, you're going to see a very different game plan. I think you're going to get big plays out of the passing game with Andrews and Zay Flowers. But I think, man, they are waiting to unleash Derrick Henry, make the Chiefs really get worried about that. Then you start getting Lamar Jackson out on the edges. It's going to really, look, we say running backs don't matter, but I really do believe in this case, when you pair him with Lamar Jackson and now the defense has to decide, do we want to invite the run inside or outside? And most teams decide against the Ravens historically, we'd rather Lamar not have the ball in his hands. And so that leads these wide open running lanes for Gus Edwards. We saw it for J.K. Dobbins. These guys all averaged over 5 yards per carry. I cannot wait to watch Derrick Henry in a Ravens uniform in this scheme.
I mean, you look at it over these last 2 seasons, the Titans ranked 30th in yards before contact per carry in back-to-back years. The Ravens, ever since Lamar has been under center, have ranked first or second. So it will be an interesting litmus test because, again, they have also had some very good offensive lines over those years. Lamar certainly has plenty to do with it as well. But replacing not 1, not 2, but 3 different starters up front, again, will be a good just overall how important are Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry to the equation? Or are we going to see maybe a bit more mortal version of a usually, quite prolific Ravens rushing attack? So I think it really is as simple, Dwain, as, oh my God, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry in the same backfield. How can you not get excited about this? And you mentioned Gus Edwards. Again, friendly reminder, everyone, 16 touchdowns for Gus Bus over the last 2 seasons, 0 over more than 7 yards. So in standard leagues and half PPR especially, Derrick Henry potentially to the freaking moon this season. All right, Dwain, another couple of fun matchups we got going. Jets versus the 49ers and Falcons versus Steelers, a.k.a. the return of the Achilles quarterback. So the Achilles have healed. Gotta love these, doctors and modern science and everything going on there. But my goodness, could we have picked 2 kind of more tough matchups for these guys to immediately deal with? Nick Bosa, Fred Warner and company going off against Rodgers on Monday Night Football. And then T.J. Watt and the Steelers facing off against Cousins again in that aforementioned Arthur Smith Bowl. So thoughts on these 2 matchups, Dwain, and what your level of trust is, I guess, with these quarterbacks in their first game back off the Achilles injuries.
Yeah, I mean, this is not easy. I mean, if you look at our DVP tool, which stands for defense versus position over at FantasyLife, we keep all this data for you. And just looking at last year, and I'm always careful, Ian, with looking at defense from the year before and how much signal we really give that in week 1. But in these 2 cases, we actually have a couple defenses that have been pretty good for a while right now, especially the 49ers. So when you look at the 49ers, they only give up 15.4 fantasy points per contest last year to opposing quarterbacks. So that ranked number 26. Like if we're saying, hey, good being number 1, we had the Commanders giving up 22 fantasy points per game last year to opposing quarterbacks. And so we've got a drastic drop off to where we are with the 49ers. So yeah, I think this is going to be really interesting. Having said that, I just feel like with Garrett Wilson, you get the run game going with Breece Hall. I mean, I know we got these kind of a shocking assessment from Bill Belichick. It's awesome what Underdog's doing with him, but I'm like, come on, Bill, we already know, get the ball to Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. You didn't just crack the Konami code here. So yeah, looking at the 49ers, I have downgraded Aaron Rodgers, in my projections for the week. I still feel fine about the skill players around him. It's obviously a pretty tough matchup for them as well. And then Kirk Cousins, whenever we look at him versus the Steelers, last season, this wasn't quite as bad, but 15.6, I mean, right there. I mean, they're in the same range. They're healthier. The Steelers were playing with a lot of injuries. 49ers had a few too, but the Steelers were dealing with a lot of injuries through last year, and we're still able to be so respectable on defense. So I think there's a chance, especially week 1, where they're fully healthy, that this is a better unit than what you were dealing with last season. Now, again, Kirk Cousins, if he's healthy and right, he has enough weapons to beat any defense because you've got Drake London on the outside. You've got Kyle Pitts who can be working that seam. He is a true mismatch, guys, and I think you're going to truly see that this year with the accuracy that you're going to get from Kirk Cousins. And then you got to worry about Bijan Robinson as well. So anytime you have 3 playmakers, you can even stress out the best defenses. The question is, to your point, how crisp is Kirk Cousins? That Achilles injury was later, but hey, the guy's been back. He's been out there since training camp started, so he's definitely gotten in all the reps. So I expect Kirk Cousins to look really sharp. I think the question is, are they trying to protect him at all in a game like this where you could just have TJ Watt really trying to just completely tee off on you? I will say the Falcons have the personnel, Ian, to also make it really hard for Watt to do that. They've got a good offensive line. They could give plenty of carries to Bijan. They've got Tyler Algier that they like. So I think the Steelers are going to have their hands full. I expect Atlanta to win this game, but I did move Kirk Cousins down the ranks for this week due to the matchup.
Falcons do return all 5 starters from last season when they finished as, I believe, PFF's 4th-ranked offensive line. And accordingly, PFF has them ranked as the league's 6th best unit ahead of 2024. Don't think that's surprising, and that's something, Dwain, we honestly discussed when it was, kind of Breece Hall versus Bijan Robinson, which, again, I think we both agree the answer is pretty much just yes, both these guys are going to have fantastic years. But the Jets are the group where we are making a bit of a leap forward, and as Belichick mentioned, on paper, their offense does seem to be in a very good good position. Yes, people, even on the offensive line, when they added Tyron Smith, they added, Morgan Moses, and they added Olaf Ashanu with the 11th overall pick. So as you know, two Cowboys fans here, yes, we understand it is awfully scary relying on Tyron Smith in the year 2024 to stay fully healthy. But man, again, looking at that offense, big if the injury gods can chill the hell out for once, we could be cooking with some fire over there in New York. So not going to be easy against Nick Bosa and company. They allowed the 6th fewest fantasy points per game to quarterbacks last season. Also had the 7th highest overall pressure rate. Only Joe Burrow threw for more than 2 touchdowns against the 49ers last year. But if anyone can do it, maybe, just maybe, it is a still pretty freaking good version of Aaron Rodgers. All right, Dwayne, let's talk about some wide receivers. I'm talking some target hog wide receivers with some questionable quarterbacks, because I was looking at your projections, which are pretty freaking great, if I do say so, ahead of week 1. And, as much as, again, it'd be fun to be able to say, oh, yeah, Justin Jefferson, only guy in Minnesota, he's getting 15 targets. You want to be a bit more conservative with it. So you actually don't have anybody really actively projected for double-digit targets, even though, again, we realize that is going to happen during the course of any week. But where I was intrigued was that there were actually, out of the 22 top options you had projected for at least 7 targets, there were several actually ranked outside of ESPN's top 50 overall players. So looking at Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin, DeAndre Hopkins, if he is going to be able to suit up, and George Pickens, we got some target hog wide receivers who were drafted more in that wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 range. Yet, as we look ahead to week 1, sure do seem like the central focus of their passing game. So out of those 4, Dwayne, we can even throw Malik Neighbors in there, even though he didn't exactly come as much of a surprise. Who are you most excited about starting on, I guess, confident in getting that feature week 1 role?
Yeah, I mean, I think his Neighbors I'm the most confident in. I think he's going to get the featured week 1 role. To your point, we can move on, though. We've talked enough about Malik Neighbors, and we'll be talking about him more again, but we won't right now. So I think with Pickens, like we've already seen it, 26% target share, on the plays without Deontay Johnson over the last 2 seasons. I expect him to be the leader here. I kept him a little bit down my ranks, though, Ian. I'm slightly above industry consensus. Like industry's at 49, I'm at 45. So I wanted to be a little bit more bullish on him. But there is still the one. We got a couple of concerns, right? We've got Arthur Smith, who rotated Drake London off the field for some. I don't know. I don't understand, because you got to get Kadarius Hodge reps. Sorry, no offense to. Not trying to catch strays out or throw strays towards Kadarius Hodge. I guess I would be shooting them, not throwing them. Like it would probably be much more dangerous if I had a bow and arrow and I shot a stray towards Kadarius Hodge's family. That wasn't the intent, but my point being is you got to get Van Jefferson out there. Like Arthur Smith just does dumb stuff. Honestly, I'm just hoping Mike Tomlin steps in and goes, no. George Pickens is on the field all the time, bro. Like you do your scheme, you do all the other stuff. I'll handle who's on the field. And so when I look at that, I'm a little bit worried. So I like him, and I've got Pickens definitely inside my top 50 players this week, Ian. So you're probably starting him if you're playing in any sizable league, like of 10, 12 players, especially if you're playing 3 wide receivers or you've got 2 flexes. George Pickens is a lock in your lineup. Terry McLaurin, though, I think is the one that I feel the safest about, even though I've got him ranked a little bit behind George Pickens right now, just because we have no clue, Ian, if they even have anyone they've decided on as the number 2 option in the offense. Now, Terry McLaurin's never really shown us that he's got that wide receiver 1 upside target earning ability, but I kind of feel like you and I both believe, just based on watching Terry McLaurin, that he's a good enough route runner and separator that's probably in there somewhere. And the other thing we forget is last year, Terry McLaurin, if you remember, at that last preseason game, and picked up that high ankle sprain, tried to play through it early in the season. I wonder if that really limited him for the rest of the season last year, when we thought we would get more out of Terry McLaurin because Sam Howell actually did throw for a lot of yards. But when I look at McLaurin, what are we talking about? Luke McCaffrey's not getting on the field so far in camp. We've got Ben Sinnott, who I think is probably their next best target earner, appears at least to be buried on the depth chart. We just got, again, news confirming he's number 3 this week. And then we've got Diami Brown, who's a nice deep ball specialist. But we've got Jamison Crowder and Olamide Zaccheaus and Noah Brown battling for the slot. I mean, Terry McLaurin, man, he's sitting in a pretty good spot, and he might have his best quarterback that I bet he does have his best quarterback that he's ever played with. I mean, the guy's played with some pretty bad signal callers. So Jaden Daniels, even as a rookie, I think is going to be a massive upgrade.
If you guys want to, shield your ears so they don't start bleeding, I would understand. But yeah, here are Terry McLaurin's career quarterbacks: Taylor Heineke, Sam Howell, Dwayne Haskins, may he rest in peace, Carson Wentz, Alex Smith, post freaking 20 leg surgeries. All right. Case Keenum, Kyle Allen, Garrett Gilbert, Colt McCoy, Jacoby Brissett for 23 passes, and he actually looked freaking fantastic together. And then Ryan Fitzpatrick for all of 6 passes as well. So I'm with you, Dwayne, as much as, DJ Moore has kind of been that poster child for the guy who just had one bad quarterback after another. Hey, DJ Moore and Terry McLaurin hopefully really finally getting to play with the best signal callers of their careers. So my wide receiver 28, Dwayne's wide receiver 27. We are both, right there in line with the consensus rankings. Yes, Terry McLaurin in far more lineups than not should be starting. And great call out with that, turf toe back in August last year, Dwayne. And honestly, I pulled up his, career, just injuries going on, and maybe haven't given enough credit towards Terry constantly playing through the pain. In September of 2019, had a hamstring issue. He had a high ankle sprain in November of 2020, then an October hamstring injury back in 2021. So one thing after another, it seems like. Again, please, injury God, spare the artist known as Scary Terry. Just give us one season with high-end quarterback play and a little bit of good health, and I really do think we could see that sort of, 2023 DJ Moore explosion. Really do believe 13, even 1,400, upside yards are on the table, and that was accordingly one of my bold predictions ahead of 2024. So good stuff, Dwayne. We got plenty more week 1 goodness to break down, but first, a quick word on Paramount Plus. Guys, you won't miss a minute of the action when you stream the NFL on CBS Live on Paramount Plus. Stream every local, national, and postseason NFL on CBS game live all the way through the AFC Championship, once again on Paramount Plus. Download Paramount Plus today to start your free trial and unlock a season of epic moments, including all of your local Week 1 games, again, only on Paramount Plus. Dwayne, speaking of some pretty freaking good incoming rookie quarterbacks, welcome to the NFL, Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. Now for the, maybe not $1 million question, but whatever the grand prize in your fantasy league is question. Can we start them immediately in week 1? Caleb versus the Titans, Daniels versus the Buccaneers. How are you feeling?
Absolutely. I've got Jaden Daniels inside my top 8 quarterbacks this week. Ooh. So we talked about this all offseason. The reason is really simple. Like, he's going to run a lot. I think he's going to have over 100 rushing attempts this season, even if he's not a good passer. We've done the research. You guys are probably sick of hearing me say this, but I'm going to say it one more time. We've got 21 instances since 2011 where we've had a quarterback have 100 plus rushing attempts and throw for under 3,500 yards. They finished on average as the quarterback 8 on the season. They've averaged over 20 fantasy points per game. So get ready. It's coming. He's going to be getting design run looks. He's going to know when to scramble. Those are going to be huge chunk plays. And then if he does come through as a passer, Ian, then that's going to be a major bonus. We're not really expecting that. We're not projecting it. And he still comes out as the QB 8 for this weekend. I only have him projected for 221 passing yards. And he still comes out as the quarterback 8. How? Because I've got him down for 36 rushing yards, and he's got a chance to score a rushing touchdown as well. So I only have him projected for 1 passing touchdown. But again, this is why we've been talking about this all offseason and how important the ability to run the football is, what kind of floor it establishes. And really the interesting part with Jaden Daniels is the ceiling is going to come from his passing game. Like, the floor is set because we know what he's going to do as far as getting around with his legs. So yeah, I think Jaden Daniels is a guy. I've got him right now ahead of Joe Burrow, got him ahead of Jordan Love in the ranks for the weekend. Caleb Williams, also inside my top 12, Ian. I mean, we've got a game here, 25.5 team total for the Chicago Bears against the Tennessee Titans. Again, I don't like to overly lean into last year's data points with these defenses because there's injuries and all sorts of stuff you got to go back and work through. There's a lot of nuance, but they gave up 250 passing yards per game. And for the first half of last season, like, the Titans were one of the worst pass defenses in the league. Now, they've made some moves to try to improve their secondary, but they also lost some players as well. So we'll see where it all shakes out, but I don't think it's going to suddenly be a great pass defense. And so when you tell me that, I get Caleb Williams. I've got him throw into Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and freaking Rome Odunze. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, I love Caleb Williams. I think that the matchup is really right. So I've got him ahead of guys like Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford, Brock Purdy. I've got him ahead of Dak Prescott this week. So really like Caleb Williams, and I love Jaden Daniels.
You mentioned the additions. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed. They also got Chidobe Awuzie out there in the cornerback room now. Maybe it is a great secondary, but great still might be a couple shades off what this Bears wide receiver room is looking like. Again, you just listed the names. So truly special. And with Caleb, man, again, we were talking one of the other nights, all of our drafts together, blending together in my mind at this point. But really wouldn't be that shocking if we do see Caleb, skirting to the end zone 5-6 times this season as a rusher in his own right. So not quite the same upside as Jaden Daniels. That's why both of us do have Daniels, ranked higher because of that sweet rushing ability he's got going on. But yeah, answer to Caleb or, Jaden Daniels. Got Jaden ranked just a little bit higher, but more than anything, yes, we are excited to be starting both of these guys. So final stat I will be pointing out with Cliff Kingsbury. I know I've, done a little bit of cold water on the experience just based on what we saw in the preseason. But hey, looking at what he did for Kyler Murray in Fantasyland, absolutely love the returns because only the Saints, shout out Taysom Hill, actually utilized more exact quarterback design runs than the Cliff Kingsbury-led Cardinals during the 2019 to 2022 season. So Dwain's season-long projections do have Daniels going for 122 rush attempts on the year. Again, you can be a horrible passing quarterback, and if you run that much, you're still going to be pretty darn good in Fantasyland. All right, Dwain, we got two situations going on in Los Angeles and Dallas where, yeah, we want exposure to the running games because we have Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, trying to establish the old rock behind a retooled and hopefully better Chargers offensive line. Then we have a Cowboys team that has largely done nothing else other than work as one of the league's highest scoring offenses whenever Dak Prescott has been healthy over the years. So none of these running backs were exactly costing a pretty penny in fantasy drafts. Yet, as soon as we start getting the data points to indicate there's a clear-cut leader, we're all going to be chasing them on the waiver wire. So hopefully we can get ahead of that. Is there a specific Chargers and or Cowboys running back, Dwain, that you want on your roster right now before we see what happens this Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, I want Rico Dowdle and J.K. Dobbins and Kamani Vidal. Like those are the three players I want to have on my roster heading into this weekend. If you look at the projections over on FantasyLife right now, I don't have any of these guys clearly leading their backfield because it would just be like it wouldn't be good for me to do that because people use these things to bet on, prop bets and things like that. Do I have in my heart of hearts my favorites to win each backfield? Yeah, but I can't project it that way because there's a lot of different ways that our projections get used. So I've got it really tight right now. Like I have Zeke with a slight lead in the rushing department in week 1 over Rico Dowdle, 40% to 37%. But again, really close. So give me the player that might still have some juice over the guy that's getting a little bit more of the work. I think with Zeke, the big thing though, Ian, is he might get those carries inside the 5, and it's not a guarantee that he doesn't get the passing down reps. There is a world where we come out of week 1 and suddenly think, man, should we have drafted Zeke? So I don't want to completely, just sell out on Zeke, but Dowdle is the guy I'd rather have. But I just want to make sure I paint the whole picture. Like Zeke could come out of week 1 as the clear winner that we feel differently about. And then whenever you talk about the Chargers, look, it's J.K. Dobbins. We know we've got the ACL, LCL, injury from a year ago. Also had a hamstring tear. I mean, it was brutal. That was 2 years ago. Then we got the Achilles injury last year. But this man's on a mission, Ian. And you just love whenever you hear a player like this that's so motivated. I mean, J.K. Dobbins is fully motivated, and it's a weak depth chart right now. I mean, look, Gus Edwards is fine, but he's really just a guy. If J.K. Dobbins is even 70% of what he used to be, he's going to be the best running back on this team, and it's got a really good offensive line. What you mentioned, they've invested major capital. Did again in the first round this year with Joe Alt. So when I look at this one, Dobbins is the guy I want to have. But for week 1, the projections are really tight. I have Dobbins in a slight lead, 38% of the carries, 35% to Gus Edwards, with Vidal getting the least in week 1, 17%. I would see his role slowly expanding now. He could come out and have 50%. We get these surprises on week 1. But just from what we saw with preseason, everything we heard from the beat reporters, if you're putting it all together, and he's not a high draft pick. I think Vidal right now will be on the low end of the totem pole with a chance to work his way up as the season goes along. But J.K. Dobbins is the name, man. If somehow he got to 50% of the rushing attempts in this offense, I bet you this offense runs the ball more than any other offense in the NFL that doesn't have a rushing quarterback. Because once you throw a rushing quarterback in and your dropbacks turn to scrambles, that's an unfair advantage to really assess who's running the ball more. Right. But pure design rush attempts, I think that the Chargers will be top 3 in the NFL. So I want to be in on this offense.
I'm optimistic on Dobbins too, but I will say, Dwayne, when you kind of laid it out the way you did, where it's like, okay, the ACL, the PCL, the torn hamstring, the Achilles, but that's a lot of things to say before, but that's all I'm saying. So again, hoping that he is going to be healthy out there. And look, he's someone where if we do see him go out there, really struggle, not look the same, and honestly just working behind Gus, okay, it's not like you used the highest draft pick on him in the first place. We can cut him, on the waiver wire. So I'm with you. Again, at least finding out right now, Dobbins is my pick over Gus. And I also do think Kamani Vidal is someone that, again, you shouldn't panic on too quick. I will say, Dwayne, I wish everyone in the world did waiver wire Wednesdays. It's alliteration. Why can we not trust that alliteration? But of course, we still have plenty doing it on Tuesdays. And Kamani is one of those guys where I actually saw him get cut in a couple of my ESPN leagues because he's only projected for like 0.1 or 0.2 points, which, yeah, please, for the love of God, don't start him this week. But if you do see Kamani on that waiver wire, again, he's someone in one of these fluid running back rooms who, not saying he's going to be on the cover of week 2 waivers, but man, if this does end up being more of a 33 split, and we have Kamani looking like the running back with the most juice, could be someone that we're getting a bit more excited about in a hurry. So good stuff on Zeke potentially being the guy here as well. And at a minimum, I'm just excited to see Zeke's short yardage goodness and some of the good things he does in pass pro be appreciated a bit more when it's not tied to that $90 million contract. So again, seems to be between Zeke and Dowdle. Dwayne, do you think there's any chance we're writing off guys like Deuce Vaughn and even Dalvin Cook a little bit too soon? Because as much as Zeke and Dalvin, we both agree are washed, I mean, Dowdle and Deuce Vaughn, that's the competition, man. And we are only 1 year removed from Dalvin Cook averaging north of 4 yards per carry, going for over 1,000 total yards. Any flyer potential on Deuce and Cook?
I think in your deeper leagues, yeah. Like Vaughn's the name I like more because I think he brings a different skill set. Like he was one of the most prolific receivers as a running back that we've seen in college in the last 15 years. Like, honestly, you have to go all the way back to find players like Darren Sproles if you're looking at his archetype, which were more productive than what we saw from Deuce Vaughn. So he's a guy that can play on third downs. He can play in the 2-minute offense. Like, you're not going to want to put him out there probably on third down and long. You're going to have Zeke out there to handle the blitz. But in situations where you want to throw the ball on third down or you're trying to get into your 2-minute offense, we could see Deuce Vaughn be a sneaky player there. I don't think he could get a huge rushing workload. Again, we saw Darren Sproles, though, post fantasy, top 12 finishes, Ian, back in the day without even getting like 100, like right around 150 rushing attempts. So, I mean, I think Deuce Vaughn in the right scenario could push like 125, 130. It wouldn't surprise me if that happened. Obviously, you've got to be in a really deep league, though, to want to go pick up Deuce Vaughn. Like, he's a guy that I take in the last round of like 20-round drafts occasionally here and there and just like, okay, let's see what happens week 1. He's a guy they wanted to keep on the roster. I think Dalvin Cook, like, we got to see like him be elevated from the practice squad. There's a lot of signals there. But yes, if this running back room disappoints in week 1, then I think everything's on the table for week 2.
Deuce Vaughn, 116 catches, 1,280 yards, and 9 touchdowns receiving in 3 years at Kansas State. So, again, I know we've kind of been pigeonholing Rico Dowdle as that pass-down friendly back, but maybe Deuce Vaughn does surprise. But, yeah, I think in far more leagues than that, guys, probably better, waiver wire sort of running backs you can be ahead on than Vaughn and Cook for now. All right, Dwayne, let's talk about the Packers for a second because we have these wide receiver, running back, and tight end rooms in an offense that we expect to score a lot of points, but things are a bit crowded. So how do we think these rotations will shake out? Because as much as, yes, I think we agree Josh Jacobs is the man, not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 well-qualified wide receivers in Green Bay right now. And we have healthy versions of Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. So again, out of those specific wide receiver and tight end rooms, Dwayne, who do you think is going to be the odd man out, unfortunately, in week 1?
Yeah, I think we've got with the Packers, like in the backfield, we're going to have to monitor the injury situation. Marshawn Lloyd, it sounds like he's progressing the way they want him to. So we don't know if he's going to play this week. But if he plays, then I'm just going to kind of split the workload, honestly, between Lloyd and Emmanuel Wilson for like the backup reps, for the Packers. Might give a slight lean to Lloyd, but again, hasn't been practicing as much. Will he be able to get on the field in certain situations where the coaches know they've got to trust him? They might not think he's ready for that. So I could see Emmanuel Wilson getting a little bit more work, but I think Josh Jacobs is going to get over 60% of the rushing attempts in week 1. I've got him projected for 63%. That's 15 attempts. I've got him ahead of industry consensus. I think it could be a tough matchup because you're playing against the Eagles, and man, they are loaded in the front 7. These guys are just stacked on the defensive line. They've got really good edge players as well. So the matchup isn't ideal, but a healthy Josh Jacobs in week 1, Ian, I could totally see him getting 20 touches between, his carries and a few receptions in the passing game. Right now, I've got him projected in that 17 to 18 range. So obviously, if you got Josh Jacobs, that you're starting him. It's not the ideal matchup, but I think he could still come through, punch in a touchdown. And then we look at the wide receiver room. Right now, I've got it projected as Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and Jaden Reed basically splitting the first team work with Dontavian Wicks rotating in. Like Dontavian Wicks probably going to be around 30% route participation, just enough that it's going to be annoying to all the other weapons. Also, nowhere near your starting lineup. You can't put him in. Like, could he catch could on those 30% of routes, he catch 2 bombs for 2 touchdowns? Yeah, but you're playing with complete fire. I think he's going to have to earn his way into a larger role, or if something happens with Christian Watson. So it's also really hard to project, Ian, like which one you like the most. Any one of these 3 players could have a really good game. We saw that with Jaden Reed last year. We saw it with Christian Watson. I will say Christian Watson's my favorite for week 1, but all 3 are really close in the ranks.
Wicks, one of, if not the only, kind of handcuff wide receiver really trusting, but it's for a reason. He's really freaking good. And honestly, if something happens to Watson, Doubs, or Reed, I think Watson immediately slides in. And again, not Watson, Wicks slides in and immediately does some really good things for fantasy. So do not cut the man. For the love of God, do not do that. But yes, it is going to be a little bit before we can confidently start him. So now, guys, want to turn our attention to 3 high-profile matchups in week 1. But first, a quick word to our friends over at DraftKings. Hey everyone, with the football season kicking off, it is the perfect time to dive into the action with our partners at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. And right now, all new customers who bet $5 will instantly get $250 in bonus bets and 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. That is something we can all celebrate. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and sign up using our promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. And stay in on the action and use your $250 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings. DraftKings is the place to bet on touchdowns, and if sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use our promo code FANTASYLIFE and bet just $5 on any wager to get $250 back in bonus bets instantly and that handy dandy NFL Premium Plus prescription. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Dwain, Thursday Night Football, it's back. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, AFC Championship game rematch in Arrowhead. My goodness, I cannot wait for this one. So we already talked a bit about Derrick Henry going on, but can we just remember that as much as everyone, I think it was, Roquan Smith talking about, you got to make Patrick Mahomes one-dimensional. Oh, and everyone's freaking out about him. This Ravens defense did hold the Chiefs to 17 points, and they were literally inches away if Zay Flowers could have just held on to the football for potentially forcing overtime. So overall thoughts on this matchup and who you're excited to see?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this one, a little bit out of the gate, but I would just say that I think the Ravens are going to have a very different plan in this game. I think they're going to try to use Derrick Henry to soften up the Chiefs. That is where you can really get after the Chiefs. They're really good in coverage. Now, they lost some players, in free agency. They lost one of their top corners, so we could see a little bit more of a weakness in the secondary, but they've kind of done this in the past where they lose a top cornerback and you're like, wow, they just replace it right away. And so if we look at last year, they drafted a first-round pick in a cornerback with McDuffie. He was really good out of the gate. So I think the best way to really attack, the Chiefs is to try to get that run game going. And then you get the explosive playmaking going off of that, trying to hit Zay Flowers. And let's let this man loose. This is not a player that has to play at the line of scrimmage, guys. Like, you go watch this guy's film. He's got the route running ability to get over and the speed to get over the top of a defense. So I'm looking forward to seeing a big step forward from Zay Flowers in that aspect. The Chiefs, man, they're going to Chiefs. Like, they've got all the weapons now. I expect them to come out and throw the ball all over the place. And you can't make Patrick Mahomes one-dimensional. That's the problem. He's got too many weapons now. So, Baltimore, you're in my prayers.
Both Dwain and I have Rashee Rice, wide receiver 13, and we have Xavier Worthy as a top 33 option at the position. I have Zay Flowers, wide receiver 24, Dwain, wide receiver 34, so a little bit of a difference there. Maybe that'll be someone, again, we dive into a bit more in our rankings edition of the Fantasy Life show right here tomorrow on Thursday. So, Dwain, going to be a fun one there. Another fun primetime matchup is the highest total of the week. Again, another playoff rematch. We do have the Rams visiting the Lions. Stafford, Jared Goff, let's go. Again, 51-point game total. So looking at that Rams defense, man, no Aaron Donald. This could be a situation, Dwain, where I think we're seeing almost one shootout after another to start the year because we trust Stafford, we trust Puka, we trust Kupp. Good things are going to happen on the Rams offense, but man, wouldn't be surprised if that defense has some hiccups going early in their first 5 games. Lions, Cardinals, 49ers, Bears, and Packers. 5 pretty good offenses that, again, I think could make that transition to life post-AD a lot tougher than the Rams might prefer.
Yeah, and I mean, it'll be interesting to see what Detroit does and what they look like on defense this year. I mean, they add Terrion Arnold, first-round pick, at cornerback. Obviously, we know that their secondary was the biggest issue. If this team somehow, Ian, gets to a spot where they can actually slow down opponent passing games, man, the Lions are going to be even more dangerous. Obviously, Vegas not worried about it out of the gate this week. It's only a 4-point difference between these two teams. But this is the kind of matchup, Ian, that fantasy dreams are made of because we've got 2 loaded offenses that we love, and they're teeing off against one another. We've got Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, and David Montgomery on the Lions side. Those guys all rank highly this week. And on the Rams side, we've got a highly concentrated offense with Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and Kyron Williams. And even, in these kind of games, you can see some of the other tertiary players suddenly have value in deeper fantasy leagues. Like, wouldn't surprise me if this is a game where Jameson Williams actually does come through for you and maybe give you a wide receiver 3 finish. So these are the kind of matchups that will move a guy like JMO from being more wide receiver 4, boom, bust territory to maybe getting into that wide receiver 3 conversation.
It's like you might have read my week 1 manifesto, Dwain, which is live on FantasyLife.com, where one of my bold predictions was Jameson Williams having one of his boom performances here on Sunday Night Football. Again, we'll be waiting all day for it. It's going to be a fun one. Final matchup again, we wanted to highlight, Dwain, Cardinals at the Bills, which, hey, you guys can go ahead and stream on Paramount Plus. Seems like a pretty freaking good idea to do that. Kyler, Josh Allen. I went ahead and ranked every single matchup of the week, Dwain, in that article, just, in terms of my own objective entertainment value. And as fun as the primetime games are, honestly, this came in at number 2 for me. So talk about Cardinals Bills and some of the new weapons that you're excited about seeing.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big reveal game for us. Does James Cook finally get a larger workload? Can he get carries inside the 5-yard line? Is Keon Coleman already completely dust, like so many analysts are saying, just because he has to win via contested catch? Oh, my God, that means he's never going to be good. It's going to be so funny when this dude just goes, Kelvin Benjamin rookie season, like right out of the gate with Josh Allen. That would be the comp, right? Dude just comes out and goes for 1,000 yards, catches 11, 12 touchdowns. So can't wait to see those 2 players. Curtis Samuel, we're going to have to wait and see, Ian. I don't want to steal your thunder because this is your dude. He's an Ohio State Buckeye, but a very versatile player. And then we have Khalil Shakir. Had a weird route participation rate with the starters in preseason that kind of just, threw me off a little bit. But a lot of times that doesn't mean anything. If you just go watch the film from the preseason, he looked like the best wide receiver for the Bills. So, yeah, I'm super excited to see what happens there. And can this offense really turn more back into a passing offense, or are they going to look more like what we saw at the end of last season? And then on the Cardinals side, it's Marvin Harrison Jr., man. I mean, like, Kyler being fully healthy is great, but it's Marvin Harrison Jr., man. I mean, and we have Trey McBride, who was so amazing at the end of last year. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think this is one of the sneaky best matchups on this slate, and I can't wait to watch it.
No such thing as a bad football game. I refuse to slander any game, but yeah, relatively speaking, especially excited for this one and excited to be back in your guys' life again each and every day throughout the week during the entire NFL regular season. So make sure you guys check back in tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, when me, Dwain, and Matthew Friedman go through some of the most important ranking questions of the week. So appreciate you guys tuning in. For Dwain, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for checking out the Fantasy Life show. And until next time, take care, everybody.